people who escaped from Nazi Germany and got to, I believe it was America, and they met with Nicola, and when they were speaking about how they escaped and was getting away from the Nazis, the two couples named Ray started speaking about how they hated the Nazis and called the Nazis a bunch of little low-life monkeys. Tesla laughed and said, hey, I know a monkey myself. His name is George Scherf. I used to call him a little monkey. Curious George, I called him. The name Curious George came from Nikola Tesla. Now, everyone knew that Nikola used to call George Scherf Curious George. 2 days before the airing of the movie, the originator and the producer was found dead in a pile of garbage because he was about to give interviews about who Curious George really was. Here he is again. What you're looking at is a cartoon version of Nikola Tesla. And they said that the man in the yellow hat was actually the creator of this so-called series, but the creator of the series actually, giving honor to Tesla, used some of his own features for the little man in the yellow hat. Here you have Nikola Tesla meeting with one of the princes of Romania, right here. Now, the story is that on Tesla's deathbed in his hotel, he was visited one last time in April of, I believe, 1976? When did Tesla die? April? I don't remember the exact date, but during the 4 days that Tesla was interned in his bed and looking like this because he was brought out to meet the prince, he was visited one more time by this man, George Scherf. But before he was visited by George Scherf, he said, or it was said, that he was visited by 2 U.S. government agents. Now, we found out later on that those 2 U.S. government agents were actually Reinhard Gehlen and Otto Skorzeny. Otto Skorzeny confessed to the author that after he got the materials, they strangulated and suffocated and murdered Nikola Tesla. They took his materials to the American government, which is not the American government. And right now, at this moment, the Nazis have some of Tesla's most sophisticated material of all time. They have time warp machines. They have death rays. They have mind control machines. They have an arsenal that you would not believe based on Tesla's information. And Tesla was a good man. In fact, he was a great man. He was about to give electricity to everyone. Sex magic. That's right. We know what happened in the situation around him, first of all, falling from grace because, remember, he was doing a sex ritual magic and somebody died during the ritual. And it went out all over, at least Italy at the time, that this sex magic had killed this person, and he became known as the Beast. Yeah. He was the devil incarnate because of what had happened. And it was all based on the newspapers pushing this on him. In fact, it got so deep that Mussolini kicked him and all his followers out of Italy. He became so poor as a result of that, that he was living destitute. Until one of his friends, Frank Harris, who was a big-time author back then, Frank Harris, he brought Aleister Crowley in to live with him while in France. So him and his boy, now these two were known as the atomic dogs of their day. They would screw anything walking. And Frank Harris, they said, was worse than Aleister Crowley. Now, Aleister Crowley, living in France with his partner, Frank Harris. Aleister Crowley had, Frank Harris met a socialite, and her name was, what was her name? Nellie O'Hara. Nellie O'Hara was a very close friend, good friend, with, what was her name? Pierce. Her name was, what was her name? What was Barbara's mother's name? Pierce. Pardon me. I have to go and get to my notes. Y'all hold on for a second, please. Thank you very much. What was the name of this woman? No. Her name was Pauline Pierce, married to Marvin Pierce, who was the president of McCall Corporation, who published McCall's Magazine and Red Book. So now, this female, Pierce, she was, they knew her, she had a reputation of hot pants. She was everywhere. She even had an affair with Eisenhower. She was out there. Mama was out there. She asked her, she wanted to go to France and travel and be, the woman of the world and travel and have a good time. This dude was running a corporation. He said no, so she took off and went to see her friend Nellie. So she's there with Nellie, Frank Harris, and Aleister Crowley. Now, Aleister Crowley was initiated into the highest form of the, and I have all of that there, and I'm trying to bring it off from my memory because there's so much to talk about, but he was initiated in the highest form of the OTO, the Order Templar Orientalis, and he was initiated into the rite as the highest of the high. But part of the ritual was to make sure that he went through the same Kemetic ritual, which was to die and at that time be given all of the information he needs on the psychic plane and then come back to life. But what to do in the sex magic is that he had to do every kind of sex act from everybody, they were wearing him out. He has to be exhausted sexually to the point where he's half asleep and just can't barely come up. And then, after he's out cold in a coma, then they start playing with him. And they start doing things sexually to him. Now, if he comes back to, they have to stop. Until they exhaust him again, until he's halfway in twilight. And then they start telling him things and doing rituals over him to resurrect him back. Part of the people who were there doing the sex rite magic with him so that he could ascend was Pauline Pierce. When Pauline Pierce left to come back in June, I believe it was in that or September of the following year, when she got there by October, I think she came back in September or so forth, she gave birth to her third child named Barbara. Now, the Pierce on Barbara Pierce is really Percy, because the Pierces changed their names after the gunpowder plot that Guy Fawkes was part of. Barbara Pierce Bush, was part of the people that had to flee London, England, because they were part of the gunpowder plot, and James I had a contract out on her family. Until she changed it to Barbara Piercy, from Barbara Pierce. But guess what? We look at again at him, and we see one more time, and this one definitely kicks it.